For the first time, the UAW, the United Auto Workers Union, is holding a strike against all three American major car manufacturers, Ford, Stellantis, which is Chrysler, and General Motors. They've never done that before. Typically what they do is they strike against one and the other two fold. This time they're going against all three because this time it's the biggest one and it matters. And there's some historic information you got to have to understand what's really going on. For a number of years, the UAW was a very corrupt institution. A lot of the major unions were. The Teamsters, SEIU, UAW, they all had issues. What the UAW leadership was exposed for doing, and people went to jail, is auto executives were essentially bribing the union leaders to take it easy on them and compromise on issues. And so the auto workers, they'd get a good deal, but not the deal they wanted. And the unions would puff up their chests and claim that, well, they were browbeaten at the negotiation table. The auto executives would splash water on their face and look exhausted and claim they were browbeaten. And they'd come away, and behind the scenes, they had paid each other off, bribed each other, and people went to jail over it. One of the things that happened that was kind of a no-brainer given the economics of the day as Japanese and other auto manufacturers, the Germans, came into the U.S., moved to the South, were non-unionized, and could pay lower wages and produce, frankly, a better product. And then you had the rise of Tesla and others, is the auto manufacturers, the big three, Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors, had to put in a tiered system of employment. So the guys who had been there a long time in this tiered system, they got higher wages, they got a pension, and they got retirement health care coverage. They began to tier the system. So tier one was the old guard, who got the pensions, got the health care after they retired, got the high salaries. Then there was tier two. Tier two had to work, 8 years to reach the hourly pay of the tier one people. They didn't get a pension. They didn't get retiree health care benefits. And then they added another tier. And then they added sub-tiers of the tiers, and it became this Byzantine labyrinth that no one could really figure out except the bean counters in the accounting department of the auto manufacturers. And that has caused some rage among the auto workers. In addition, they weren't getting major pay hikes, at least. Now, you got to understand and put this into context that the American auto manufacturers, going back to the 50s, and the embrace of union negotiations and privileges of the unionized workers, once right to work became a thing and southern states started attracting Hyundai, Kia, BMW, Mercedes, and others, Toyota is a big one, the American auto manufacturers couldn't keep up. But they had this system. I mean, the auto manufacturers of America were essentially a health care system and a retiree benefit system for people who, on occasion, might build a car. They didn't put out as much. They didn't work as hard. They made way more money. They got way better benefits than the Toyota workers, the Hyundai workers, the Kia workers, the Mercedes, the BMW, you name it. And it was all because of the UAW system. Toyota, when it came into the U.S. back in the day, started looking at places like Tennessee and elsewhere to build and avoided the unionized states. They went to right-to-work states and exploded. And their cars tend to last longer. They tend to be better produced. They have better warranties. They tend to cost less. All of these things come into play here. Now, I love my GMC. I have a GMC. We got our kid a Kia. The Kia has a 100,000-mile warranty, 10 years or a 100,000-mile warranty. It was competitive with, actually better than a lot of the comparable cars from GMC, Ford, Chrysler. Better warranty, had better safety ratings, better manufacturing ratings, more reliability, all easier to fix when something did go wrong, all these sorts of things. This doesn't even include groups like Tesla or Rivian. Well, the auto workers of America have decided to go on strike for the first time against all three, and they want a couple of things. One, they want to work 32 hours a week but be paid for a 40-hour work week. Can you imagine? They They want to be paid for a 40-hour work week, but they only want to work for 32 hours. Wow. The other thing they want is greater benefits, healthcare and otherwise. They want automatic cost of living adjustments. They want regular, reliable pay raises, which is frankly a reasonable thing. As inflation goes up, boost their pay. But a wage increase to the extent that they want it with reductions in work hours per week is not a good thing. The Japanese car manufacturers are not going to pay their workers to work 40 hours a week when they only work 32 hours a week. That's going to put the American auto manufacturers at a major disadvantage. The auto manufacturers have countered with they'll give a 20% pay raise, but they're not going to do cost of living adjustments. They may do inflation bonuses. The 32-hour work week thus far is a non-starter. And here's the thing. Oh, and by the way, the auto manufacturers are proposing we're not going to give you 32 hours a week at 40 hours a week pay, but we will give you Juneteenth. Don't you love that? We're not going to give you all these things, but hey, you can have Juneteenth off too. Good Lord, Juneteenth. But one of the issues here is the pensions and the health care benefits after retirement. And this is off the table for the big three auto manufacturers. This is completely off the table. Now, why? You've got to understand, and this goes back to I keep saying it, but you have to understand this. The labor costs for non-American auto manufacturers who produce cars in the United States. You name the auto manufacturer that is not Ford, GM, or Stellantis, their labor costs are less. Their pension costs are less. Their defined pension benefits are less. Their health care costs are less. Their hourly pay tends to be less. Their workers are still making a good living, but they're not American UAW workers at one of the big three. They've always had the best deal. And the UAW looks at Ford, GM, and Chrysler and says, look how profitable you've been in the past several years. They're like, have you paid attention to what's going on in the auto market right now? Used cars are as expensive as new cars. You can't produce them as quickly. The auto lines are slowed down. It doesn't matter to the UAW. Now, the other thing you have to understand here with the United Auto Workers is in addition to them having a new guard that's come in, a new leader who wants to show he is going to fight for the workers. He's going to put the workers first. He's not corrupt. He's not on pay. They're trying to get over these scandals that the UAW had. The other thing that he wants to show and affirm is that he can make big gains too. It's not just the Teamsters. It's not just the SEIU. That the United Auto Workers are relevant and they can make big gains for the auto workers as well. Look at what the Teamsters did with UPS. I can do it with the auto workers, except the auto workers cannot go along with it. That's the thing that seems to be missing from the conversation. The United Auto Workers want things from the auto manufacturers the auto manufacturers can't give them. They can't give a 40-hour work week that's only 32 hours. They can't afford it. Costs continue to go up. That would drive up their labor costs. In fact, it would make their labor costs double. They can't do it. There's just frankly no way to make work what they want to work. So the auto manufacturers are going to go on strike. They're going to strike against the big three. They're going to rotate the factories which they go on strike. They're not all going to go on strike at the same time at the same places, but it's going to cause a work slowdown. Now, this is going to have cascading effects. It's going to have cascading effects on the Tier 2 and Tier 3 component manufacturers. This is separate from the labor tiers. So you have auto manufacturers, and they make their original parts for their cars. You have Tier 1 manufacturers who are separate companies, but they make the original parts for the auto manufacturers. So you've got an outside company, but it makes the seat belts, it makes the buttons, it makes the radios. Then you have a Tier 2 supplier. The Tier 2 suppliers supply the Tier 1 suppliers. So they supply the buttons for the seatbelt. They supply the actual buckle. They supply the leather. They supply the cloth. They supply the thread. They supply these things. Then you have tier 3, and they provide the smaller things. The problem here is that a strike doesn't just affect the auto manufacturers. It affects their tier 1 supply chain. It affects their tier 2 supply chain, and it'll affect the tier 3 guys to a degree. So you're potentially putting hundreds of thousands of Americans on the unemployment line as this slows down. The tier 1 and the tier 2 manufacturers in particular will start to make cutbacks. This begins to have a cascading effect on the American economy, which Joe Biden cannot afford. There, of course, is a political angle here. Joe Biden claims to be super union, super labor friendly. Joe Biden can't afford the strike, because a strike against the auto industry of America is so integrated, it begins to hurt the tier 1 and tier 2 dealers. It hurts the car dealerships. It hurts their families too. It has cascading economic effects that are not good for the United States. Biden and the UAW president don't have a great relationship. They've tried to warm it up. But look at the Teamsters. The Teamsters decided to strike against UPS if UPS didn't give them what they demanded. UPS gave them much of what they demanded, and at the last minute, they said, nope, we're not going to strike. They cut a deal, made the Teamsters guy look good, made UPS look good. They avoided it. The Biden administration was worried about that because of the real-world impact of you not being able to get your Amazon packages. The railway workers were planning to strike, and at the last minute, Biden and Congress preempted them and said, this is essential to the economy. You're not allowed to strike. Go take the deal. They ultimately took the deal. They avoided the strike. But the UAW refused to listen. The UAW wanted the strike. The problem is, you got Hollywood striking. The writers are striking. The actors are striking. Some of their demands are nonsensical. Some of them are legitimate. The UAW has some legitimate issues about the cost of living, but the Biden administration has been trying to tell everyone the cost of living is good. Don't worry about it, you ungrateful person. Why can't you acknowledge that the economy is good? This is what the UAW workers are saying, though, that the economy isn't good, that the cost of living is inflation is outpacing it. It's too expensive to live right now. They can't make ends meet. The Biden administration has been pushing back against all of this. Will they now do this with the union workers? I doubt it. How can you? These are the union workers. Biden wants union support. He doesn't want them to go to someone like Trump. He doesn't want them to go to a Republican. They'd be hard-pressed to. But if Biden doesn't give them what they want, they just might, as a big middle finger to Joe Biden. He's got this tiger by the tail he can't let go. It's just going to have cascading effects in the economy. The unions want things that the auto manufacturers cannot give them without bankrupting the auto manufacturers, and there will be no bailout in Washington this time. Republicans won't go along with the bailout if it's to line the pockets of unions that fund Democrats. They won't do it. So the strike could go on a while, and the longer it goes, the more effects it has on the tier 1 and the tier 2 and the tier 3 manufacturers of parts and components for the auto manufacturers. More people get laid off. More people have to go on unemployment insurance. More people have problems. It causes economic turmoil. Don't look now. Donald Trump is now ahead of Joe Biden in the Real Clear Politics polling average. This could be a problem for the Democrats. And the delicious irony is it will be because of the Democratic-leaning United Auto Workers plunging America into economic chaos for demands no automaker can give without themselves going bankrupt. It's just too perfect, too hilarious, too ironic, too rich to watch. And yet, it's happening.
He's got the courage to